the Psalms over the summer, and today we continue looking at them, and we're going to look together at Psalm 139, as Scopes has told you. When Don first asked people to tackle the Psalms, I think he said to us, I'd like you to concentrate on encouragement and hope. And we seem to have morphed into Psalms in the storm, but I think this is a psalm which addresses both storms and encouragement and hope, because we live in a world of storms at the moment, don't we? And we go on living, and it looks like we're going to be living in storms for quite a while. We've got the pandemic, of course, which hasn't disappeared fully, and it's affected each and every one of us, hasn't it? And then we've got financial and employment meltdown, which has been going on. Education and school life is in tatters. At the end, you can come and maybe when I finish singing. But schools, education, all in tatters. Climate change, a real catastrophe. Events of biblical proportions happening around our world. And if you haven't been staggered by the events in Kabul over the last week or so, then I don't know what will make you think stormy, anxious thoughts. Scenes that are just unbelievable. People hanging onto jet planes, people giving their children away over barbed wire. Think about that. And I just don't know where that will end, but it's a very worrying scenario. So if we're living in storms, what does Psalm 139 bring to us? Well, I believe, as I said, encouragement, assurance, and hope. It's a reality check for us this morning. It's God saying to us, sit down and for just 5 minutes, listen to me as I speak through my word. What title could I give? And I'm going to be nodding to Timothy every so often. I don't know what I'd do without Timothy. I don't know what we'd do without Timothy. He said, would you like a clicking thing? But, you know, stage mics, clickers, all too much. So I'm going to be nodding to him from time to time to ask him to put up another slide. What title could I give, could we give to Psalm 139? Well, I wondered about the story of my life. I wondered about you can run, but you can't hide. But I thought the most appropriate one, Timothy, was this one, knowing me, knowing you. And that's the best I can do this morning. Gosh, you're a tough audience, really tough audience. I was going to say that rings a bell, but I'll just get straight and square with you lot this morning. But I think it is appropriate, knowing me, knowing you. I'm going to divide the psalm into 3 sections. And Maybell has already read to us very well, verses 1 to 5. But I'm going to read verses 1 to 6, which is the first section. And again, Timothy, you could put up the heading for this and the verses. I've put there, if you see it, the all-seeing God. I'm not going to look at verses 19 to 22, not because they're difficult, not because they don't fit in, because I think they do, but we don't have time to explore them this morning. But let's read verses 1 to 6 and verses 23 and 24. O Lord, you have searched me and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely, O Lord. You hem me in behind and before. You've laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Verse 23, search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. Remember, whoever wrote this psalm, we think it might have been David, was writing the inspired word of God. And there is right at the start a recognition by him that God looks straight into our hearts and minds, and he sees absolutely everything. He searched us as we might search or research something online, and he knows us. You've searched me and you know me. But not as I know the chap from number 8 down the road from us, who I used to stop and speak to when we were all walking during lockdown. I know his name's George, I know his wife's Mary, I know he's an accountant, I know he's got 2 children, and one's a girl who's working in Australia, but I don't know him as God knows me. You know everything about me, says the psalmist, every little detail of my ordinary little life. You know when I sit down, when I get up, when I go out, when I lie down at night. You know when I am worried about things. You know when I'm in despair with family and maybe even with church. You know when I'm crumbling. You know when I'm hiding everything from everybody. You're familiar with all my ways. And then he says, before a word's on my tongue, you know it completely. And that shakes me a bit, because in James chapter 3 in the New Testament, we read that with our tongue we praise God and curse men. That's sobering, isn't it? God knows every word that I'm about to say before I say it. There's absolutely nothing about me that God doesn't know. He sees and remembers everything, all the stuff that I've forgotten. And then he says, you hem me in behind and before. And I think that's not a hemming in as a sheepdog would do to a sheep. I think this means you've got me covered, God. You cover my back. You get the picture. God knows me inside out, whether I think that I have a relationship with him or not. He knows me and he cares. And if you switch off now, and please don't. If you do, please snore quietly. But if you switch off, please remember these 5 words from this psalm. You know everything about me. And I added verses 23 and 24, which are the last 2 verses of the psalm, to this section because they seem to me to fit here. Search me, O God, and know my heart. He's already said, you do search me. So why is he saying this? I think he wants God to search him again, to search him more. He wants to know God searching him. He wants to know God more deeply. Test me. Do I have any unnecessary anxious thoughts? See if there's any offensive way in me. And here's an odd thing. If you ask God to search you, very often it's not him finding the offensive way. It's you finding and recognizing the offensive ways in your life. And you want to move away from them, and you want to get back on track with God, the God who's leading you day by day and also leading you to life everlasting. Sorry, Timothy, I didn't nod. You could put up the next slide while I have a sip of water. I will try harder to nod at the right time. The second section is verses 7 to 12, and again, you could put up the next slide, Timothy, if you didn't mind. I've called this the everywhere God. I could have used a big word like omnipresent, but I think everywhere sounds better. Verses 7 to 12. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. I think that most of us would admit, maybe not to others, but to ourselves, that from time to time in our lives we've tried to hide from God. We've tried to run away from him. You know, you've said to yourself, I'm going to tuck myself in this little corner out of the way. I'm going to keep out of trouble. I'm not going to do anything bad or wrong, but I'm going to keep out of the way of God. I've headed off to university, and now that I'm free of the constraints of parents and church and all that sort of thing, I'm going to spend some time enjoying myself in sport, in traveling, and just having fun, and God won't see me. Well, God says, yes, I will. And this psalm teaches us that God says to us, there's nowhere you can go, there's nowhere you can run to and get away from me and my care for you. And again, Timothy, I should have nodded for the next slide. There's nowhere you can go, not up, not down, even if you think you're so far down that where you are is hellish. I will be there. Get up before the dawn and fly across the Mediterranean, the Great Sea, which I suppose was like going to the moon for us, and I'll still be there, guiding you, leading, looking for you. Hide in a dark place. It's not dark for me, says God. However dark the place you are in, it's light for me. We can go to a desert island to get away from everybody. Even there, God will be with us, holding us as a parent holds the hand of a toddler, even when we think we don't want him to. Think of Jonah. Jonah tried to run away from God, didn't he? He was told by God that he wanted him to do something, so he tries to rush away, jumps in a ship, blah, 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 and he can't get away from God. God keeps coming after him. He keeps tabs on him. He keeps looking after me, and he keeps asking him to do what he's calling him to do. Where can I go from your spirit? The answer is absolutely nowhere. The third section is verses 13 to 18, Timothy, thanks. And I've headed this, the all-creating God. And these are my favorite verses in the Psalm. I think there's so many golden nuggets in these verses, and I hope you picked up some of them from Scholz's talk to the children. First of all, the psalmist recognizes that God is his creator. Verse 13, for you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you. So as I say, the first thing the psalmist does is acknowledge God as his creator, his maker. You formed my inmost being, he says, and I think he's referring here to his soul. You knit me together in my mother's womb. God, he says, put the pieces together, cells, blood, bones, DNA, breath. And I've got to say just now, I'm not medical. I'm worried because there is at least one doctor hanging around here. Come and disagree with me later because I'm showing my ignorance. He then says, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Some of us early in the morning when we get up feel more fearful than wonderful, don't we? But we're all unique. We're all made in God's image. We're all created by him, and we are beautiful. Do you remember St. Christina de Aguilera, who said, for I am beautiful in every single way? No? That's another wee joke, but I'm going to stop. Anybody heard of Christina Aguilera? Please say yes. Thank you very much. Good. And Timothy, I should have nodded again. This show's not going to run, is it? I was made in the secret place, he says, and how secret it must have been in the psalmist's day, and I think it still holds secrets today. I think that's still true. I know we've got medical advances of all kinds, x-rays, ultrasounds, in utero operations, etc. But to me, there's still a mystery about the spark of life in the creation of our souls. I was woven together, he says, in the depths of the earth. And I think that's a metaphor for saying it was deepest concealment from everybody. And I say again that I believe there's still a mystery in new life. For me, here's a dangerous statement. In vitro fertilization is miraculous, but for me, there's still that divine work of giving life. Your eyes saw my unformed body, he says. I believe that only God, this is my belief, only God is able to give life, and only he watches the progress of single cell to fully formed human being. I suggest to you, and come and disagree later if you like, I suggest to you that now we know in theory, and maybe we've seen what happens, but I think not how it happens. There is for me a miracle when a child is born, and it's hard to understand somebody witnessing a birth, yet not recognizing a miracle and not recognizing a divine maker behind it all. God is with us, I believe, from that very first unseen moment when a seed hits an egg and they collide and they start the miracle of conception and new life. He says, all the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. What an amazing thought that is, full of facets of truth. God knows not just our first days of prenatal existence. not just about today, he also knows about all of our tomorrows and how many we have left. And how does that affect your living and mine? Our attitudes, our words, our invitation to God to walk with us as he leads us in the way everlasting. And we don't have time to dwell this morning on or what this Psalms means for the pro-life versus abortion debate. God knows us, I believe, and values us as embryos and makes plans for us, not from our birthday, but as he knits us together and makes plans for us. Before our mothers even knew that cells were multiplying within their own body. Let me move on now to the last section, and I'll nod in a minute, Timothy. I'm sorry that I'm so bad at all of this. Let me finish with an illustration. Most of you know, I think, that in 2020, 2 grandsons came into my life, one of whom has been dragged out screaming today. I say my life because, to be honest, there are other lives as well. Kirsten, Fraser, Anne, Morag, Lindsay, Glenn and Glenn's family, but please permit me to be self-centered this morning. And from being told of their coming, and of course we didn't know whether they were going to be girls or boys, until they arrived was the most endless waiting period for me. I couldn't believe it. I don't know why I felt that way. And while I was in that 9-month period, I worried a lot, if I'm honest. I prayed, obviously, but I had anxious thoughts about what's going on, is all well, etc., etc. And when the time came for them to be born, both these boys, I paced up and down as I never did with my own children. And that's a recurring theme with Mrs. McNeil. She keeps telling me, you never did this for your own children, and you never worried about that with your own children. I think there's an element of truth in that, because I nearly missed Lindsay's birth because I was returning a video to Global Video. That's a true story, and most of you who are under my age probably won't know what a video is or what Global Video used to be. The arrival of Finn and Harris has brought such incredible joy into my life. Our lives, you won't be surprised to hear me saying that, lives which I suppose can never be the same again because of their arrivals. They're now an irreplaceable part of our family. And my father used to talk about somebody being in with the bricks. That's what these guys are, or throwing bricks, to be more honest, with one of them. But watching them grow and develop in front of my eyes has been amazing. They've changed my hopes, my perspective, my prayers, and having known them for only 15 months and 12 and a half months, respectively, life without them is now unimaginable. I've got some photos, and you can maybe put them up one by one, Timothy. You know when grandparents say to you, well, when I was a boy, if a grandparent said, can I show you a picture of my grandsons or whatever, you were okay because you knew they could only have about 2 in their wallet or their purse. Now when people like me say, well, let's see a picture of my grandson, everybody panics because they know I've got 500 of them on my phone. I'm not going to show you, excuse me, I'm not going to show you 500, I'm only going to show you, I think, 8. These are the 2 boys, brand new, I suppose. Finn's photo, Finn's on the left, and it's actually got a wee card, I am 1 week old. Not that he knew that at the time. The next one, Timothy, is them 6 months old. In fact, Harris has got a wee card behind him, I am 6 months old. The next one, they are 9 months old, and I remember this well because that was Finn going out on his first night as a bouncer in a nightclub in Sucky Hall Street, and that was Harris, who'd started his tunnel by that time trying to get out of the house. And the next one, I think, is the 2 of them. That's Finn on his first birthday, and that's Harris at his first birthday party, which was a fantastic day with a fantastic bouncy castle, which even I was on. I think I've said it to some of you, Finn's the wild one, and I've said for ages, Harris is the wee angel, always been a good boy. I have talked about maybe one day, because there's only 10 weeks between them, the 2 of them will go to one of Colin MacLeod's SU camps, and I've always pictured Finn at that camp saying to Harris, come on and we'll sneak out and we'll do this and we'll do that. Or let's sneak into the kitchen tent and we'll steal a couple of chocolate biscuits. And I've pictured Harris saying, now Finn, do you think that would disappoint our parents? Do you think that would disappoint Mr. MacLeod? And remember what we were learning from the Bible yesterday evening. But I'm beginning to think it might be the other way around because Harris is catching up. They're great boys, they're great fun. But occasionally, to get back on track, I find myself having, I would say, an almost out-of-body experience because I look at them and I'll listen to myself almost, you know what I mean, out with my own body, saying to somebody, the boys will really like this when they get older. And I then find myself saying, who are the boys? They didn't exist and they weren't in my vocabulary until just a little while ago. And it's probably retirement and old age and the time to watch these boys that I say to myself, I wonder what will happen in their lives. What will they grow up to be and to become? What will they do for a living? Will they be musical, sporty, quiet, loud? Will they be parents themselves someday? If they live to the year 2050, they'll be 30 years of age. What climate disasters are going to be around them by then? If they live to the year 2100, what will the world be like at that time? And before I answer that, let me show you one final photograph, which makes me think they'll probably be okay. Finn is just over 1 and walking. Harris is 11 months and not yet walking. This is actually, I think, my favourite photo of the two of them together so far. And they've dragged a stool in the kitchen round to a corner of the kitchen. I'm pretty sure Finn would have said to Harris, you hold the chair, I'll climb up on it and I can reach a cupboard with biscuits in it. I'll get the biscuits, I'll jump back down, we drag the stool back round to where it's from, and nobody will notice, and we'll have a wee party behind a sofa. But the police caught them, and that's them staring at the headlights. But as I say, all these worries I have about them, all these thoughts that I have, is that natural? I don't know. But in this psalm, God says to me, Stuart, why do you worry? Why did you worry? Because I was with these boys from minute one, day one. I was knitting them together. I saw them and I knew them before anybody else did. And while you can't, I will walk with these boys all the days of their lives. I will hem them in. I will be with them. I've already counted the hairs on their head. If they try to hide from me, they'll fail. And every time they turn to look for me, I will be there. And don't think about 2050 or 2011. I've already got in my books and records their allotted span of time. And I know how long they have on this world. And when they wake up each morning, I'll be with them. But one day when they wake up in the next life, I will be there still with them. I know them. I wove the genes and characteristics of several families, several generations of families into them. I'm giving them personalities and skills and words before your very eyes. And above all things, I love them. And the psalmist didn't know this, but I've sent my son, Jesus, to show them how much I love them and to point them to the path of life everlasting. But if that isn't encouragement and hope in the storms of life, I don't know what is. And may God help us this morning to hear him speak from this psalm, maybe listen and understand and live our lives in the light of his promises, and let the God who knows us absolutely and completely lead us day by day in the way everlasting. To summarize, I suppose the psalmist is simply saying, wow. And having said wow, I think his response is to say, I can only do one thing, and that is to worship you and praise your name, and tell you how worthy you are.